Buenos Aires, the Paris of Latin America, that gave birth to tango,
It was a way of life.
Evita and Juan Perón,
There's a lot at stake during that difficult time.
ruthless dictators who arranged for those with differing views to disappear.
There were members of the church were present at torture sessions that are guilty of involvement in these human rights abuses.
And where Jorge Bergoglio would grow up amid corruption and the clash of politics and religion, a first-generation Argentinian of humble beginnings who survived treacherous times and high-profile outspoken opponents
Para que sean segundos, para que no terminen.
to become Pope Francis, the People's Pope.
He has new energies. We're getting to know a different person.
Good evening from Buenos Aires. I'm Jim Rosenfield. Pope Francis is expected to attract millions of people when he visits the United States in late September. He is without question the most popular pope of our time. But why? What is it about this man that transcends political, social, and religious boundaries? The answer is as complex as the country in which he grew up. And that's where our story begins, right here in Argentina. Once ranked among the world's greatest cities, Buenos Aires survived both world wars and the Great Depression, boasting beautiful architecture influenced by a growing immigrant population, mostly European, agricultural wealth that made Argentinians famous for their steaks, and a sophistication among the city's citizens that was enviable, until it all fell apart. Some historians blame the Perons, Juan and his most famous wife Evita, for policies that led to economic collapse and military coups. Jorge Bergoglio lived and led through an era of terror and poverty from which his beloved city has never fully recovered.
I think that he understands the pain in people. He really does.
Silvia Tuoso worked alongside Bergoglio for years at the church's television station NBC. She recalls a stern but benevolent boss.
So he is not judgmental or prejudiced. No, Bergoglio is a very open-minded man.
Walking among the people, incognito at times, to celebrate on holy days, washing and kissing the feet of others long before he was on the world stage.
Los quieren locos para que den vida a los demás.
But also not afraid to take a strong stand, scolding people and the government about social ills like drugs and prostitution or legalizing same-sex marriage. And as a Jesuit, comes with the belief that the church should function more like a field hospital, healing the wounded, not merely preaching rigid doctrine from a pulpit.
Buenos Aires no ha llorado lo suficiente.
It's a message and style that resonates, powerful enough to bring tourists from around the globe to the Pope's native city to see for themselves where he worked and worshiped.
I think it's very symbolic that it represents how an average man of extraordinary ability can bring forward a message for the rest of the world that it's time to change.
You can usually look back at the lives of great leaders and understand who really helped shape their character. For Bergoglio, family was a huge factor. And here in Buenos Aires, so were the times, both socially and politically. He's known Pope Francis about as long as anyone. Retired musician Ernesto Lach, who treated us to a traditional tango on yellowed ivories easily as old as their friendship.
I remember you.
Lach keeps close, cherished handwritten letters from the Vatican. The sender's return address carries a simple F for Francis, but he knew him as Jorge.
What was Jorge Bergoglio like as a young boy?
Always he was smiling. Never I saw him sorry.
Mi mamá hace las compras.
Lasting impressions forged side by side at this former all-boys school in their neighborhood of Flores, a working-class section of Buenos Aires.
One of the best in the classroom.
He was smart, intelligent.
Jorge Bergoglio is the oldest of 5 children, born in Flores to Italian immigrant parents. His father a bookkeeper, his mother stayed in the home. Also an important part of his childhood, his grandmother Rosa, who taught him the rosary.
So Pope Francis was heavily influenced by this sort of large extended immigrant family and the struggles that they went through to make it in a new country. And he's very appreciative of that.
But while Bergoglio was certainly brought up in a church-going family,
I never imagined he will come be a pope. Never.
Lach told me if religion was important at home, it wasn't something Jorge focused on with friends.
He didn't talk about wanting to be a priest or religion.
No, never, never.
But he was young.
Seguro, sure.
Of interest back then, soccer, a passion he inherited from his father, who often took him to see their hometown team, San Lorenzo de Almagro, founded in 1908 by a priest. Current players know well that Francis is a card-carrying member of the club, but he doesn't watch the games because he doesn't watch any television, relying instead on scores passed along to him by his Swiss guard.
He said, I don't follow the games, I can't see the games every weekend, but I know the result of the game.
San Lorenzo's star defender Mauro Rossetto got the scoop straight from the source during a private audience at the Vatican after the team won a recent championship.
What was that like?
Amazing. We were like this.
Equally amazing for devoted fans, the team's record ever since a certain pope's election.
Since that, we start playing better and better, and we start winning. We win the championship.
Since he became pope?
Yeah.
The team has had a turnaround?
Yeah.
And to what do you credit that?
I don't know.
Is it from above?
Yeah. We said that he helped us, but I don't know if it's true or not.
As a young man, tango was another passion for Bergoglio.
In Argentina, if you didn't dance tango in 1940, which is our own national and popular expression, tango, you were out.
Francis, we're told, favors the faster beat known as the milonga, with its rapid-fire, sensual, unspoken dialogue.
The embrace in this dance is the most important, most powerful thing, because everything happens within the embrace.
But faith began moving to center stage for Bergoglio about the time American teens focus on getting their driver's license, just before his 17th birthday. One day, a teenage Bergoglio was hanging out with friends, but felt compelled to break away and come here to his neighborhood church. Francis has said it was something he felt after Mass, sitting here in this confessional, that prompted him to eventually leave behind his work as a young chemist to join the seminary.
Y allí pudo descubrir que Dios lo llamaba.
A local priest ordained by Francis told us the future Holy Father felt it was God that was calling him to devote his life to the priesthood. Some biographers say for a full year, Bergoglio told no one at home what had happened, and worked his job in the chemical factory and an occasional night job as a doorman at tango clubs. But within a few years, he would follow his calling.
His mother was very encouraging of him becoming a doctor and was not too happy to hear that he was wanting to become a priest. It took her a long time to warm up to his vocation as a priest. I think she would be okay with it now. I would hope.
And so, 5 days before his 33rd birthday, Jorge Bergoglio was ordained a priest on December 13, 1969. The ceremony took place in this simple chapel at the seminary where he would later teach and take charge of hundreds of Jesuit students. It's also where he would secretly help other seminarians find refuge from a brutal military regime. Father Jorge doesn't know it yet, but there are dark, dangerous days ahead.
People were disappearing, and he disagreed with other Jesuits on how to respond to that.
This is a country where it's impossible to separate religion from politics, and Bergoglio finds himself on the front lines of a dirty war. During his early years as a rising leader here in the church in Argentina, Jorge Bergoglio was not exempt from controversy. He was witness to a brutal military dictatorship, and he himself was accused of being complicit in the kidnapping of 2 Jesuit priests. We wanted to know what was his role during this country's dirty war. 2 photos on her office desk in Buenos Aires speak volumes of the tragedy and triumph that formed the arc of Esther Carlotto's 84 years.
Laura La mayor de mis 4 hijas fue secuestrada.
Estela told us her pregnant daughter Laura was kidnapped off the street at age 22. The college activist detained for months in one of many secret government detention centers like this one during Argentina's last dictatorship and its brutal so-called dirty war of the 1970s and early 80s. The military junta, led by a general named Jorge Videla, showed no mercy for suspected left-wing enemies of the state, real or imagined. Black and white faces, now icons of the 10 to 30,000 believed disappeared by the regime. It was right here, in the shadows of residential apartment buildings in Buenos Aires, that suspected government subversives were detained, held, tortured, even killed here on the grounds of a former naval mechanics school. Laura was held until she gave birth to a boy, reportedly while in handcuffs, then executed, as was the baby's father.
Le dijeron que me lo iban a dar a mí. Nunca llegó.
She was told the baby would be given to me, but the baby was gone, Estela told us. Also a common practice of the Videla era.
When Pope Francis was provincial in Argentina, there were a number of different people in the church trying to respond to a really harsh situation from a dictatorship. People were disappearing. How do you respond to that? How do you speak out on that? And how do you speak out on that in a way that may not endanger other people?
Back then, Jorge Bergoglio responded quietly by many accounts, helping some religious workers escape kidnapping or certain death by going into hiding.
Él nunca hablaba de eso.
Friend and fellow Jesuit Mario Rausch told us Father Jorge didn't talk about those difficult days.
Sé que hubo 3 seminaristas de La Rioja.
But Rausch shared with us the plight of 3 seminarians he's aware of who were protected here. He showed us the modest quarters that became temporary safe haven for religious men at risk of government action, kept out of harm's way here on the grounds of the seminary where Bergoglio was rector until safe passage out of Argentina could be arranged.
The spiritual exercise of St. Ignatius is a 30-day silent retreat, so people could claim they were doing their retreat with the Pope, and then nobody was looking for them for a month. By then, they had left the country and were safe in exile.
It was a difficult time for the country.
Freelance New York Times journalist Jonathan Gilbert is well versed on the fine line church leaders like Bergoglio had to walk during that dark time in Argentina. Gilbert himself investigated politically charged claims Bergoglio was actually complicit in the government kidnapping of 2 other Jesuit priests who refused to stop their work in the slums of Argentina.
There's definitely nothing to absolutely pin down on Bergoglio that he was involved in any sort of human rights abuses.
As for Estela, for more than 30 years she knew nothing of her grandson's whereabouts. She poured her anger and grief into a famous grandmothers group she co-founded, dedicated to finding lost children of the disappeared. Their signature white kerchiefs still painted on the famous Plaza de Mayo outside the presidential palace. But when we asked Estela if church leaders like Bergoglio were seen as helpful in championing their cause,
Acá no hizo nada.
a surprising answer. He did nothing was her initial reaction at the time, vocal in her criticism of what she perceived as his lack of public action on the plight of the disappeared. But then life for Estela took a dramatic turn just last August when a 36-year-old musician learned of his questionable adoption by a farmer and his wife. So he turned to Estela's organization to go through genetic testing at their lab.
La noticia que me devolvió el ánimo y me dio fuerzas.
The stunning results would restore her strength and grab headlines across the globe. The young musician's DNA was a match to the very woman whose organization had helped reunite more than 100 other families with lost babies.
Habíamos encontrado al nieto de Estela.
Estela's grandson was found, she said. And since then, she's also developed newfound respect for the Pope, proudly showing us her photograph with him in Vatican Square. Why the reconciliation? She says she's learned from those in a position to know that as a leader of the church in Argentina, Francis did work behind the scenes to help their cause.
Pero en silencio.
Work done in silence, she said. So along with the truth that her grandson now knows about his past, came Estela's truth, that Pope Francis helped save lives.
This is a tough neighborhood.
It is.
During every difficult period in his life, Pope Francis found comfort in his pastoral work with the poor.
Pope Francis spent time in beaches just like the one we're sitting in today.
All the time. all the time.
To do what? Tell us.
To be with the people, to be one more.
For Pope Francis, austerity, simplicity, and personal poverty keep him in touch with reality. His torch of humanitarian work, begun right here in Buenos Aires, lights a path in the poorest neighborhoods of Argentina. When Father Jorge was elected Pope, the contents of his daily life fit into just one suitcase.
Nobody knew a lot of things of him, of his life, until he went to Rome.
Everyday Argentinians say they had no idea the extent of Francis's austere ways.
He was a very simple person, and he left everything, material things, and he was very close to the poor people.
We got a glimpse of that simple life at the seminary where Father Jorge taught theology and was also rector. These two modest rooms kept just as they were when they were home for the high-ranking Jesuit provincial prior to becoming archbishop. Friends say Francis's simple life keeps him connected to reality. And observers say even as Pope, he leads by example.
He doesn't believe that you lead through all the trappings of the office. He refused to wear the mozzetta when he was the red cape when he was named. He doesn't wear the red shoes.
As Archbishop, Bergoglio, we're told, found comfort among the poor, visiting barrios known as bichas, visible from busy highways that traverse Buenos Aires.
Pope Francis spent time in bichas just like the one we're sitting in today.
All the time. All the time.
To do what? Tell us.
To be with the people, to be one more. To be there with them, to share, to drink a mate, to eat a piece of cake. Just to be in the daily life.
Our guide in one of Argentina's poorest neighborhoods is seminarian Patricio Lynch.
This is a tough neighborhood.
It is.
This is one of many gritty barrios with simple single-story tin-roofed homes packed together in a labyrinth of dirt roads and open sewers. Shantytowns known only by their assigned numbers. This one is Bicha 18, about an hour outside of Buenos Aires, home to 6,000 people. Families here try to make the best of it, a ready smile easy to find, despite the challenges of extreme poverty and danger.
Part of the population, just like 1% of the population, they are drug dealers.
Part of the reason parents like housekeeper and single mother Sarah Magallanes keeps a close watch on her two children.
Last year, I had this dream to start helping here in Argentina, my country.
What's your name?
What's her name?
What's your name?
His project with Amigos de Jesus, a Catholic charity based in Pennsylvania, provides scholarship for a handful of girls to attend private school outside the Bicha.
Your vision to help people here is what?
One of the main goals for us is to give them the possibility to get better themselves, through education especially.
But in the Pope's homeland, we also found a cynical view of the Holy Father's motivation to build the church for the poor. Journalist Jonathan Gilbert.
I think there's also another school of thought, the skeptical school of thought. Or are the poor just there to create a relationship of dependence on the church so that the church can re-establish its dominance in Latin America?
Still, for those on the front lines, it's work that has lasting rewards.
What have you learned from your experience here?
Helped me a lot to be in the present moment, not to worry about the future, to live the daily life, and to be happy with what I have.
Now that his message is amplified, Francis's every word is scrutinized around the world. Many are wondering if his papacy is signaling a tidal wave of change.
People love him, but he's going to be saying some things that people are not going to love.
When we come back, the message his close friends tell us he'll bring to the U.S. Latin America's first pope will soon mark another first, setting foot on U.S. soil to greet millions in 3 cities. It's a visit marked by high hopes for an American church eager for a spark of renewal. no secret the 75 million Catholics in America just aren't filling the pews the way they used to. Only a quarter of them reported going to Mass even just once a week, according to the Pew Research Center. Fewer men are entering the priesthood. The sex abuse scandal has rocked the faithful and emptied church coffers, paying out legal fees and settlements. So it's not surprising Pope Francis's arrival brings new excitement to his American flock.
But it's not just the Pope, it's Pope Francis who's coming in. That's what makes it exciting.
But what message will he bring to the U.S. and how will it resonate?
I think he will poke the bear a bit.
Observers point to his recent remarks elsewhere for signs of what to expect. Man's impact on the environment, a misdirected focus on material things, and a lack of outreach to immigrants and the poor.
People love him, but he's going to be saying some things that people are not going to love.
Father Dennis O'Donnell of Malvern, PA, works with the underprivileged. He expects the people's pope to challenge the people's comfort zone.
When he starts saying some things about economy, about cultures, about the environment, there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to like it.
And what about those hoping Francis has begun a movement to bring major changes to the church?
I mean, he hasn't changed anything in the doctrines of the church. I don't anticipate that we will see changes in the doctrines of the church.
I think he will go with a healing program to America.
Former colleague Sylvia Tuozo says you can be sure Pope Francis has given a great deal of thought to how he will address Congress, the UN, and importantly, those alienated by the church's failings.
What happened in America hurt him as a priest.
You're talking about the sex abuse?
Yes, the sex abuse. I'm sure about that because he couldn't understand that.
Whatever the message, American college student Malcolm Barant now knows he wants to experience the Pope's visit firsthand. That after a summer of study in the Pope's native Argentina.
That's a moment in history that I want to be there for and I want to witness with my own eyes.
Those who've worked closely with the Pope here in Argentina tell us he's well aware of the weight his words will carry in the cradle of democracy. It's a message many hope will resonate long after fall turns to winter in America. I'm Jim Rosenfield. Thanks for joining us.